53 cars. 2 Le Mans victories. One disaster so catastrophic that winning it has never felt straightforward. The Jaguar C-Type arrived in 1951 built for one purpose, to win Le Mans and sell saloon cars on the back of it. The 1952 campaign was a complete disaster. All 3 works cars retired before midnight with the same oil system failure. William Lyons gave his engineers 11 months. They came back with disc brakes borrowed directly from aircraft technology, a system never before used on a racing car at Le Mans. Jaguar won in 1953. Every car manufacturer in the world had disc brakes on their road cars within a decade. Total disaster. 12 months. World first. The 1955 Le Mans race that a D-Type won is almost impossible to discuss in isolation from what happened during it. Pierre Levé's Mercedes 300 SLA went airborne off the back of another car, disintegrated into the crowd, and killed 83 spectators, the worst accident in motorsport history. Mercedes withdrew from racing entirely the next morning and did not return to factory competition for 30 years. Jaguar collected the trophy. The win existed inside an event so catastrophic that celebrating it has never felt clean. The car crossed the line first. The record shows a victory. Nobody has ever quite known what to do with that fact. Nobody agreed. Nobody ever has. The Aston Martin DB4 GT Zagato of 1960 had 19 examples built by hand, each one a Zagato-bodied aluminium car on an Aston Martin chassis costing £5,470. 50 years later, Aston Martin built 4 more, not replicas. The factory designated them genuine continuations, assigned each one a build number from the original 1960s sequence, and sold them for over £5 million apiece. Aston Martin's position was that a hand-built car made to original specification by the original manufacturer is not a replica. The debate has never been resolved. 19 built. Then 4 more. Nobody can agree on the count. Jaguar drove 2 press cars through the night from Coventry to Geneva for the 1961 debut, arriving so late the cars were unloaded with mud still on the underside. They sold out before the show closed. The price, £2,097, was less than half a comparable Ferrari. The factory press car used for road tests had been carefully prepared to achieve the 150 mph headline figure. Standard production cars were measurably slower. That number was in every newspaper by morning. The number was true. For one car, Jack Griffith was a Ford dealer in New York who bought a TVR, pulled out the underpowered engine, dropped in a Ford V8, and found he had accidentally built something faster than almost anything else on the road. He contacted TVR, proposed a deal. He would supply the engines, they would build the cars, he would sell them in America. TVR, perpetually broke and desperately short of options, agreed immediately. The car was named after the American dealer. When Griffith's business collapsed in 1965, production ended overnight. TVR was left with half-built cars and no customer. TVR built it. Griffith named it. Nobody survived the arrangement. Aston Martin did not pay for the Bond placement. The producers of Goldfinger approached the company because the DB5 was the car they wanted. Aston Martin provided 2 cars at no charge and received in return the most valuable piece of unsolicited advertising in automotive history. Within 12 months of the film's release, Aston Martin had a waiting list it had never experienced before. The car that saved the company's public image was a favor, not a commercial transaction. One of the 2 original Goldfinger cars was stolen in 1997 from a Florida airport hangar. The favor that saved the company. One car still missing. The AC Cobra 427 of 1965 was built around a 7-liter Ford V8, so large and powerful relative to the car's weight that it became genuinely dangerous to drive at the limit. Road testers in period described it as requiring full concentration at every moment, with brutal consequences for any lapse in attention. Carroll Shelby's own assessment was that the 427 was too much car for most people who bought one. He sold every single one anyway. In the American performance car market of 1965, the reputation for punishing inattentive drivers was the selling point. Too much car. Every one sold. Enzo Ferrari agreed in 1963 to sell Ferrari to Ford. The deal collapsed when Ferrari discovered Ford would control the racing program. Enzo walked away from a signed agreement. Henry Ford II reportedly said, "We will beat him." Ford spent what is now estimated at over $70 million, built the car at Ford Advanced Vehicles Limited in Slough, England, a company that had existed for less than 2 years and won Le Mans 4 consecutive times from 1966 to 1969. The most expensive act of personal revenge in motorsport history was designed and constructed in Berkshire. Enzo never publicly acknowledged any of it. Personal revenge. Built in Berkshire. Won 4 times. Colin Chapman commissioned Giorgetto Giugiaro to design the Esprit, and Giugiaro drew a car so aggressively angular it looked assembled from folded paper. The production car that arrived in 1976 was almost identical to the 1972 show concept. Almost nothing had been softened for manufacture. When The Spy Who Loved Me arrived in 1977 with an Esprit converting into a submarine, Lotus received more public attention than any advertising campaign could have bought. The actual submarine car was non-functional and could not drive on land. The road car it was based on was already struggling to find buyers. The film found the audience. The car already existed. Aston Martin refused to publish the V8 Vantage's power output in 1977. Their stated reason was that the figure was so far above any rival that publishing it would be unfair to competitors. Their official description of the engine was that it produced sufficient power. The automotive press accepted this answer without significant challenge. Aston Martin sold a car whose engine output remained officially unpublished for the entire 12-year production run. Period journalists measured approximately 375 to 380 brake horsepower independently. It was still considered the fastest British production car of its era. Sufficient was enough. For 12 years, every motoring journalist who drove the Jaguar XJS in 1975 said it should have been cancelled. They called its styling an insult to the E-Type and predicted commercial failure within years. It was still in production 21 years later, outlasting nearly every rival it had been compared to unfavorably. The 1981 high-efficiency variant was the turning point. A Swiss engineer named Michael May redesigned the combustion chamber, cut fuel consumption by 25%, and turned a car the press had written off into the most fuel-efficient V12 Grand Tourer in the world. 21 years. Every critic was wrong. The Jaguar XJ15 of 1990 was never advertised. It was never sold to the public. 53 examples were built by hand at the Tur facility in Kidlington, each one derived directly from the Group C car that had won Le Mans in 1988 and 1990. The only competitive purpose was a 3-race series run as support events to Formula One Grand Prix in 1991, with a prize of $1 million. After those 3 races, the car disappeared from public view entirely. The 53 cars still exist. Almost nobody can name them. Arrived without announcement. Left without notice. Gordon Murray's specification for the McLaren F1 required the driver to sit in the center of the car, with one passenger on each side set slightly behind, the optimal driving position. Murray had concluded after years of attending Le Mans as a spectator was the middle seat of a bus. The F1 was also the first road car built around a carbon fiber monocoque, applying Formula One construction directly to something with number plates. BMW engineers delivering the engine were required to remove their shoes before entering the build area. McLaren lost money on every single car produced. The F1 won Le Mans outright in 1995 anyway, entered as a GT car, beating every purpose-built prototype in the field. Lost money on every one. One Le Mans anyway. Buyers had signed contracts based on a concept car with a V12 engine and four-wheel drive. The production Jaguar XJ220 arrived in 1992 with a twin-turbocharged V6, rear-wheel drive only and a smaller body than shown. When the property market collapsed and the cars were worth less than the deposits paid, buyers attempted mass cancellation. Jaguar refused to release them from contracts. Multiple buyers sued. Jaguar won most cases. The XJ220 was simultaneously the fastest production car in the world, the subject of active litigation from the people who owned it, and the winner of a Le Mans GT class. Result that had been erased by disqualification. Every record, every argument, lost them all. Peter Wheeler built the 1992 TVR Griffith with no ABS, no traction control, no stability control, and no airbags. His stated philosophy was that driver aids were an admission of failure, either the drivers or the cars, and TVR was not in the business of making either admission. The Griffith 500 would spin without warning if provoked and required a driver who understood the difference between what the car could do and what they personally could manage. TVR sold it for £23,000, less than half the price of a Porsche 911. The waiting list was immediate. The danger was the reason. The list was long. The Lotus Elise of 1996 weighs 690 kilograms. It produces 118 horsepower. Its chassis is bonded aluminium, a technique taken directly from aerospace manufacturing, used in a car that cost £18,950. Lotus used the bonding process because they could not afford to weld. The automotive industry spent the following decade attempting to copy that construction method. Most failed. A significant number of professional drivers consider the Elise more satisfying to drive quickly than cars with 3 times its power. The question it asked was simple. What is the minimum a car needs to be? Built it because they couldn't afford not to. Before the DB7 Vantage, Aston Martin had produced fewer than 13,000 cars across 6 decades. The DB7 sold more than 7,000 examples in a single model run, more than half of everything Aston Martin had ever built. Ford had insisted the original DB7 use a supercharged inline-6 derived from a Jaguar unit rather than a purpose-built V12. When the Vantage arrived in 1999 with the V12 Aston had always wanted, it outsold the 6-cylinder version immediately. The company saved by a compromise was rescued again by the thing it had meant to build in the first place. Saved by compromise. Rescued by what it meant to build. The engine in the TVR Sabera of 1996 was designed by Al Melling, an engineer who had previously designed a Formula One engine that never raced. TVR gave him one instruction: no compromises for emissions, packaging, or cost efficiency. Melling produced a straight 6 that fired in an unusual sequence. 1, 2, 4, 6, 5, 3, rather than conventional order. That firing sequence gave the Sabera an exhaust note unlike any other road car. TVR fitted no traction control, no ABS, and no stability systems. Their position on driver aids was unchanged from the Griffith. The waiting list remained long regardless. No compromises. No other sound like it. Lee Noble had no factory, no investors, and no previous production car when he designed the M12 from a small workshop in 1999. He chose a Ford V6 because it was reliable and available, then added 2 turbochargers. The resulting car matched Ferrari 360 Modena performance figures and cost 1/5 of the price. Noble then sold the company to investors, left, started a new company from nothing, and built another car. He has repeated this cycle multiple times. There is no satisfying explanation for why a man who keeps building cars this good keeps selling the companies that make them. Keeps building them. Keeps selling them. No explanation. The Gordon Keeble of 1964 was faster than a Ferrari, styled by a young Giugiaro at Bertone, and priced below its rivals at £2,790. £8. The company went bankrupt in 1965 after producing 99 cars, because every single one cost more to manufacture than they charged for it. A group of buyers, people who had purchased the cars and did not want the company to close, bought the factory and restarted production themselves. The second attempt also failed. They knew the arithmetic was wrong while they were building. They kept building anyway. 99 cars. 2 bankruptcies. All of it preventable. What Britain produced across these 5 decades was not a supercar industry in any conventional sense. It was a series of accidents, arguments, and acts of pure obstinacy dressed up as engineering. Disc brakes borrowed from aircraft. A Ford dealer in New York who accidentally invented a British legend. A company in Woking that lost money on every car it made and still produced the fastest production car in the world. A man in a workshop in Leeds who kept building things and selling them and starting over. No other country built supercars quite like this, not because it planned them, but because it kept refusing to accept that they were impossible. Next time, we crossed the Alps to Italy, where the arguments were louder, the bankruptcies were faster, and Enzo Ferrari lied to a regulator and won 3 world championships.